I told my daughter she wasn't welcome at my milestone birthday. Every single year, Zoe dragged around someone worse. Jade stole $400 from my emergency cash drawer. Tyler got blackout drunk and sank my brother's pontoon boat. Chase spent my 58th birthday trying to convince my mother to wire her pension into a cryptocurrency scam. Last summer, Blake backed his rusted Honda into my garage door, causing $2,400 in damage and threatened to sue me. Zoe blindly defended these parasites. After Blake, my patience evaporated. I called Zoe in early September. You can come to my 60th birthday retreat in Sedona, but absolutely no plus ones. You come alone or you stay in Denver. She got defensive. Dad, that's incredibly unfair. Noah isn't a grifter. I cut her off. You said that about Tyler and Cell Chase. You come solo or not at all. She slammed the phone down. Part of me felt guilty, but overwhelming relief swallowed it. My mother was 78. She couldn't survive another catastrophic weekend. 4 weeks of absolute silence followed. On October 10th at 8:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. Dad, I'm driving down, and Noah is in the passenger seat. We don't have to sleep at the rental, but you need to meet him. I gripped the steering wheel. We had an agreement. Her voice trembled. I know, but I'm begging you to trust me this one time. She sounded desperate, devoid of her usual defensive edge. Against every logical instinct, I caved. Friday night dinner, one wrong move, and I'm calling the sheriff. Friday evening arrived. The Sedona rental had massive glass windows overlooking the Red Rocks. My brother Ryan was pacing, still furious about his sunken pontoon boat. The heavy oak door knocked at 6:30 p.m. Zoe stood there wearing a crisp navy blouse, looking sharper than she had in a decade. Beside her stood a guy holding a tray of catered enchiladas and expensive cigars. Dad, this is Noah, she said softly. Noah extended a firm hand. Mr. Carter, I appreciate you allowing me into your space. His grip was steady, no shifty eyes. I let them inside but hawked him like a hawk. He didn't touch the open bar. When my mother struggled to slide her heavy chair out, he was there in a flash. He listened to Ryan complain about interest rates with genuine focus, but I remained cynical. A decade of bailing Zoe out of disasters wired me to anticipate an explosion. At 9:45 p.m., Noah walked out to the gravel driveway. I followed him into the freezing desert air. I don't know what your angle is, I muttered, but Zoe is a magnet for users. Whatever long con you're running, I'm not writing a check. Noah sighed. There's no angle, sir. Zoe laid out her entire disastrous history of friends on our third coffee meetup. She warned me about the sunken boat. I glared. Then why are you here? Noah stepped closer. Because she needs her father to see she isn't that person anymore. And because I care enough to stand in a freezing driveway while you accuse me of being a con artist. He pulled a heavy silver coin from his wallet. She's been in an intensive program for severe codependency since February. She tried to mail you her 6-month graduation certificate in August. You marked the envelope as return to sender. My stomach plummeted. I remembered shoving a thick manila envelope back into the mail carrier's hand. I'm not asking you to trust my word, Noah said quietly. I'm asking you to look at your daughter. When you banned her from this trip, she relapsed into a severe depressive episode. He walked back inside. I stood in the dark, feeling physically ill. I went in and observed Zoe. She was clear-eyed, fully present, laughing warmly at Ryan's terrible jokes. The hollow, exhausted look she had carried for years was completely gone. I didn't apologize right away. I couldn't. I just sat at the end of the long mahogany table and watched her. For 10 years, Zoe had been a ghost in our family, a vessel for whatever loser she was currently saving. I looked at her hands. They weren't shaking. Usually, by the second hour of a family gathering, she'd be vibrating with anxiety, checking her phone to see if her boyfriend was stealing the silverware or getting into a fight in the driveway. Tonight, her phone sat face down on the sideboard. Around 11 p.m., the guests started filtering out to their respective bedrooms. Ryan gave me a look, a mix of, he seems okay, and don't let your guard down before heading upstairs. Finally, it was just me, Zoe, and Noah in the kitchen. The smell of the expensive cigars Noah brought lingered on the patio, mixing with the scent of the desert sage. Zoe, I said, clearing my throat. The room felt too big. Noah mentioned the envelope. She stopped scrubbing a plate. Her shoulders stiffened for a second, then relaxed. She didn't turn around. I shouldn't have sent it. I knew you weren't ready. My sponsor said I was seeking external validation instead of internal peace. I thought it was a bill. I lied. It wasn't a good lie. We both knew I'd sent it back because I was done being her safety net. I was tired of the drama, the calls at 3 a.m., the constant drain on my bank account and my soul. She turned around then. She didn't look angry. She looked tired, but in a clean way, like someone who had finished a long race. It's fine, Dad. Truly. I just wanted you to know that the girls you met before, the ones who let Blake and Tyler ruin your things, they're gone. I'm not fixing anyone anymore. Noah stood by the fridge, giving us space but staying close enough to be a pillar. I looked at him. Where do you fit in then, Noah? If she isn't fixing you, what are you doing here? I'm a contractor, he said simply. I build things. I don't need to be rebuilt. We met at a hiking group, not a bar, not through a friend of a friend who's misunderstood. We work because we both like the view from the top of the mountain, not because one of us is falling off a cliff. End quote. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But $2,400 for a garage door is a lot of money. $400 from a drawer is a lot of trust. I nodded slowly. We'll see. It's a long weekend. Saturday morning hit with that brutal Sedona sun. I woke up early, habit more than anything, and went down to the kitchen to start the coffee. I expected to find the house trashed, or maybe a car missing. Instead, I found a note on the counter in Zoe's handwriting. Gone for a sunrise hike at Devil's Bridge. Back by 9 for breakfast. By 9:15, they were back. They weren't disheveled or hungover. They brought back a bag of fresh oranges and a bottle of local honey. We ate breakfast as a family, my mother, Ryan, Zoe, and Noah. My mother kept touching Zoe's arm, marveling at her skin, her eyes. You look so healthy, dear, she kept saying. The tension started to bleed out of the room until the mail arrived. The rental property was managed by a local firm, but I'd been using it for years, so the owner occasionally had personal mail forwarded there if he was in town. Ryan brought in a stack of envelopes and tossed them on the table. Among the brochures for Jeep tours was a legal-sized envelope addressed to me. I opened it, thinking it was the final insurance settlement for the garage door Blake had smashed. Instead, it was a summons. What is it? Ryan asked, seeing my face go pale. It's from Blake's attorney, I said, my voice flat. He's suing for personal injury. Claims the structural instability of my garage door caused him a neck injury when he hit it. He's asking for $50,000. The table went silent. Zoe's face dropped. I could see the old patterns trying to claw their way back to the surface. The guilt, the shame, the reflex to defend the monster she'd brought into my life. He's lying, Zoe whispered. He wasn't hurt. He was laughing when he drove away. He told me he was going to get even for you making him pay the deductible. Doesn't matter if he's lying if he has a doctor willing to sign a paper, Ryan growled. howled. I told you, Zoe. I told you that kid was a snake. Zoe looked at me, her eyes filling with tears. Dad, I am so sorry. I'll call him. I'll tell him. No, Noah said. It wasn't a shout, but it stopped her instantly. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't call him. That's exactly what he wants. He wants to pull you back into the chaos so he can use you as leverage. I looked at the summons. The court date was in Denver, 3 weeks away. This wasn't just a financial hit. It was a ghost from Zoe's past coming to haunt my 60th birthday. I have the footage, I said suddenly. The Ring camera caught the whole thing. I checked that, Dad, Zoe said, her voice trembling. The night it happened, Blake had me delete the cloud storage from your phone while you were in the shower. He told me it was for my protection because you'd use it to put him in jail. I stared at her. The betrayal tasted like copper in my mouth. She had deleted the only evidence I had to save her boyfriend, and now that same boyfriend was coming for my retirement savings. The silence in the kitchen was suffocating. I looked at my daughter, this person who claimed to be new, who claimed to be healing, and all I saw was the path of destruction she'd left behind her for a decade. I think you both should leave, I said quietly. Dad, please, Zoe begged. I can't do this, Zoe. I finally get a moment of peace, and the consequences of your bad phases are still dropping on my doorstep. $50,000. That's my mother's care fund for the next 2 years. Noah didn't move. He looked at the summons, then at me. Mr. Carter, give me an hour. Don't throw her out yet. An hour for what? To find another way to screw me over? Just an hour, Noah repeated. He took his phone and stepped out onto the deck. Zoe sat at the table, her head in her hands. She didn't look like the confident woman who walked in the night before. She looked like a broken kid. I wanted to reach out, but I couldn't move my arms. The bitterness was too thick. 40 minutes later, Noah came back in. He wasn't smiling, but he looked settled. I called a friend back in Denver, Noah said. A guy I do contracting work for. He's a private investigator who specializes in insurance fraud. He's seen Blake's name before. I looked up. What do you mean, seen his name? Blake isn't just a deadbeat, Mr. Carter. He's a professional. He's filed 4 personal injury suits in the last 3 years, always against the parents of girls he's dating. He targets families with assets. He waits until the relationship ends, then he strikes. Zoe looked up, her face a mask of horror. He does this on purpose? It's a business model, Noah said. And my friend has a dashcam video from a neighbor's house across the street from your place, Dad. He'd collected it months ago for a different case involving Blake. It shows him getting out of the car after hitting your garage, doing a literal victory dance, and then picking up a heavy rock to scratch his own bumper for more damage points. I felt a slight shift in the air. The neighbor has this? The neighbor sold it to the investigator for $100 back in July. Blake doesn't know it exists. The PI is emailing me the file now. Noah turned to Zoe. He didn't love you, Zoe. You were a mark, and you're not the one who needs to be sorry he is. The weight of the last 10 years seemed to crash down on Zoe all at once. She didn't cry. She just sat there, staring at the red rocks through the window. I realized then that my daughter wasn't just a victim of her own bad judgment. She had been hunted by people who saw her kindness as a weakness. I walked over to her. It took everything I had to bypass the anger, the $50,000 scare, and the memory of the sunken boat. I put my hand on her head. I'm sorry about the envelope, I whispered. She leaned into me, and for the first time in a decade, she didn't feel like a burden. She felt like my daughter. But the relief was short-lived. My phone rang. It was an unknown number with a Denver area code. I picked it up. Hello? Hey, Mr. Carter, a voice drawled. It was Blake. I'd recognize that smug nasal tone anywhere. I assume you got the paperwork? Just wanted to let you know I'm open to a settlement, 25 grand, cash, and I dropped the whole thing. Saves us both a trip to court. Plus, I'd hate for Zoe to have to testify about how she deleted that video for me. That's tampering with evidence, isn't it? Might be hard for her to keep that nursing license she's working toward if she has a record. I looked at Zoe. She couldn't hear him, but she saw my grip tighten on the phone. You're a real piece of work, Blake, I said, my voice shaking. I'm a businessman, Mr. Carter. You have until Monday morning. Otherwise, we do it the hard way. He hung up. I looked at Noah. He knows she deleted the footage. He's using it to blackmail her license. Noah's eyes went cold. That steady, calm contractor vibe shifted into something much harder. He thinks he's the only one with leverage. He forgot one thing. What's that? He didn't just hit your garage, Noah said. The neighbor's video? It shows he had a passenger in the car that day. Someone he wasn't supposed to be with. A girl whose father happens to be the presiding judge in the district where he filed the suit. The room went still. The quiet birthday retreat was officially over. We're not settling, I said. No, Noah agreed. We're going to give him exactly what he asked for. We're going to do it the hard way. But as I looked at the summons again, I realized something. Blake wasn't the only one who had been watching us. I looked out the massive glass windows toward the trailhead. A black SUV was idling near the entrance of the rental's long driveway. It didn't belong to any of the neighbors. Noah, I said, pointing. Is that your friend? Noah walked to the window, squinting against the glare. He didn't answer right away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. No, he said quietly. That's not him. The SUV didn't move. It just sat there, a dark blotch against the brilliant orange of the Sedona morning. Zoe stood up, her face pale again. That's Blake's brother's car. He said he was going to come down here to talk to you if I didn't answer my texts. The peace I had felt minutes ago evaporated. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was a physical presence on my property. I looked at the silver coin Noah had shown me earlier. 6 months of sobriety, 6 months of trying to be better. And here was the garbage of her past, literally blocking the exit. Ryan, I said to my brother, get mom in the back bedroom. Lock the door. I'm calling the police, Ryan said, grabbing his phone. Wait, Noah said, his hand out. If you call the cops now, Blake's brother will just claim he's lost or looking for a trailhead. We need him to make a move first. If we trigger a confrontation now, it ruins the fraud case. We stay inside. We don't engage. He's on my property, I snapped. He's on the easement, Noah corrected. Technically, he hasn't crossed the line yet. He's waiting for us to lose our cool. That's how they win. They provoke, they record, they sue. It's all part of the same game. We sat in the living room, watching the black SUV through the glass. It felt like being in a fishbowl. Every time I looked at Zoe, I saw the guilt eating her alive again. This is my fault, she whispered. I should have stayed in Denver. I shouldn't have come. Stop, I said. I sat down next to her. You didn't drive that car here. You didn't file that lawsuit. You're staying. We're finishing this. But as the sun began to dip behind the rocks, casting long, bloody shadows across the valley, a second car pulled up behind the SUV, a white sedan. Noah stood up, his face grim. Okay, now it's getting crowded. The door of the white sedan opened. A woman stepped out. She looked to be in her 50s, dressed in an expensive-looking suit that seemed entirely out of place in the desert. She didn't look like a thug. She looked like a shark. She started walking up our driveway, a briefcase in her hand. Who is that? I asked. Zoe gasped. That's Blake's mother. She's a senior partner at the the firm he's using. This wasn't a family of losers, it was a family of predators, and they were standing on my porch. The doorbell rang. It wasn't a frantic pounding. It was a rhythmic, professional chime. I went to the door. I didn't open it. Can I help you? Mr. Carter? The woman's voice was smooth, practiced. My name is Diane. I believe my son has spoken to you. I'm here to discuss a private resolution to our legal matter. It would be in everyone's best interest if we sat down and spoke before things become irreversible. I looked through the sidelight window. She was smiling, but her eyes were scanning the interior of the house, looking for Zoe. I have nothing to say to you, I said. Are you sure? She asked. Because I have a copy of a statement from a certain nursing board investigator. It seems there's been an anonymous tip regarding a certain student's involvement in a domestic theft incident last year. Something about $400 from a drawer. My heart stopped. Jade, the girl who stole the money. Blake must have kept her in his pocket this entire time. If this lawsuit goes to discovery, Diane continued, every mistake your daughter has ever made becomes public record. I can make this all go away, Mr. Carter, right now. I have the withdrawal papers in my bag. All I need is your signature on a small compensatory agreement. She wasn't asking for $25,000 anymore. She was holding Zoe's entire future hostage. I looked back at Zoe. She was shaking now, her face buried in her knees. Noah was standing over her, his jaw set so tight I thought his teeth might crack. 1 hour, I whispered to myself, remembering Noah's words. I looked at the clock. The hour was up. Noah, I called out. Is the file here? Noah looked at his phone. He nodded. Just hit the inbox. High def, audio included. I turned back to the door. I unlocked it and swung it open. Diane smiled, stepping forward as if she'd already won. Wise choice, Mr. Carter. Shall we go to the table? No, I said. I stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind me so she couldn't see Zoe. We'll stay right here. I want your son's brother to hear this too. I signaled to Noah. He stepped out onto the porch and turned his phone toward Diane. He pressed play. The screen showed the neighbor's driveway. It was clear as day. Blake was there, laughing with a young woman in the passenger seat. You could hear him clearly. Her old man is a pushover. I'll wait a few months, tell her I'm crippled, and he'll write a check just to keep her from crying. He's got that provider complex. It's too easy. Then, the girl in the passenger seat spoke. My dad will kill you if he finds out I'm in this car, Blake. He's already pissed about the last time you tried to use his name for a settlement. Diane's smile didn't just fade, it vanished. Her face turned a sickly gray color. Is that Judge Miller's daughter? She whispered. It is, Noah said, and I've already sent a copy of this to the judge. I imagine his private resolution will be a bit more formal than yours. The black SUV at the end of the driveway suddenly roared to life. The brother didn't wait for his mother. He peeled out, gravel flying, and sped off toward the main road. Diane stood there, her briefcase suddenly looking very heavy. The nursing board tip, she stammered. I can. You're going to do exactly nothing, I said, stepping closer. I wasn't the pushover Blake thought I was. Not today. You're going to walk back to your car. You're going to file a dismissal of that suit by Monday morning. And if I ever hear your son's name, or your name, or so much as see a shadow near my daughter again, I won't just release this video. I'll make sure every partner at your firm knows exactly how you spend your weekends. She didn't argue. She didn't even look back. She turned and practically ran to her sedan. I watched the dust settle on the driveway. The desert was quiet again. I went back inside. Zoe was standing in the hallway, her eyes wide. Is it over? She asked. For now, I said. But as I looked at her, I realized that while the external threat was gone, the real work was just beginning. The look of relief on her face was there, but beneath it was a profound sadness. She had just seen, in high definition, that the person she thought she loved had viewed her as nothing more than a paycheck. I need to go for a walk, she said quietly. Zoe, just by myself, Dad, please. She grabbed her jacket and headed out the back door, toward the trail that led up into the red rocks. Noah started to follow her, but I caught his arm. Let her go, I said. She needs to see the view for herself. We sat in the living room for a long time. Ryan brought out the cigars Noah had gifted me. We didn't light them. We just sat there in the fading light. You're a good man, Noah, I said. I'm just a guy who knows what it's like to be the parasite in the story, Noah said. I spent my 20s doing exactly what those guys did. Difference is, I didn't have a mother like Diane. I had a father like you, who let me hit the bottom until I decided to climb out. I looked at him, surprised. You were like them? Worse, probably, he said, staring at the empty driveway. That's how I knew where to look. It takes one to know one, Mr. Carter. The sun disappeared completely, leaving the rocks a deep bruised purple. An hour passed, then 2. Zoe didn't come back. I looked at my watch. 8:30 p.m. The desert gets cold fast. She should be back by now, Ryan said, standing up. That trail isn't marked well for night hiking. I felt a familiar knot of dread tightening in my chest. She's fine. She just needs space. Dad, Noah said, his voice low. Look at the table. I turned. Zoe's phone was still there, but next to it, where her car keys had been, was nothing but a small piece of paper. I picked it up. I can't be the reason you worry anymore. I thought I was ready, but I'm not. I need to do this somewhere you can't see me fail. I ran to the window. My car, the SUV I'd driven down from Denver, was gone. She took the car, I whispered. She doesn't have her phone, Noah said, already moving toward the door. She's driving in the dark, in the mountains, without a map. The relief of winning the legal battle vanished. It didn't matter if Blake was gone. The damage he'd done was still echoing inside her. We piled into Ryan's truck. The engine roared, cutting through the silence of the Sedona night. As we hit the main road, I looked at the GPS on Ryan's dash. There were 3 ways out of town. Which way, Dad? Ryan asked, his hands white on the wheel. I thought about the girl who used to hide in the closet when she broke a plate. I thought about the woman who deleted a video because she was scared of a boy's shadow. She's not going back to Denver, I said. She's going to the lake. The lake? Why the lake? Because that's where Tyler sank the boat, I said. That's where she thinks it all started. We drove in silence, the headlights cutting through the pitch-black canyons. When we reached the turnoff for the marina, I saw the taillights of my SUV parked near the boat ramp. Zoe was standing at the edge of the water. The lake was a flat, black mirror. I got out of the truck and walked toward her. I didn't run. I didn't yell. The water's cold, Zoe, I said when I was 10 feet away. She didn't turn around. I just wanted to see if I could find it. The boat. It's at the bottom, honey. It's been gone for years. I keep trying to pull it back up, she said, her voice cracking. Every time I think I'm okay, I feel the weight of it. I feel the weight of every dollar, every broken door, every disappointed look you gave me. I'm not looking at you like that anymore, I said. You should be. I almost cost you $50,000 today. No, I said, stepping next to her. You didn't. You gave me the chance to finally see who was standing in front of me. I spent 10 years looking at the people you brought home. I forgot to look at you. She finally turned to me. In the moonlight, she looked small, but she didn't look broken. She looked like she was waiting for a permission she'd never given herself. Go home, Zoe, I said, said. I don't have a home. My lease is up next month. I was going to move in with Noah, but after today. How can I? I looked back at the truck, where Noah was leaning against the fender, giving us the space we needed. You're not moving in with Noah, I said, and you're not going back to that apartment. Then where am I supposed to go? You're coming back to the house, not the one in Denver, the guest cottage on the property. You're going to finish your nursing degree, and you're going to pay me back for the garage door $50 a month for as long as it takes. She let out a small, wet laugh. That'll take forever. Good, I said, pulling her into a hug. I've got plenty of time. We walked back to the vehicles. The crisis felt over, but as we reached the gravel, Noah's phone rang. He looked at the screen, and his face went completely neutral. Who is it? I asked. Noah didn't answer. He just showed me the screen. It was a text from an unsaved number. The video doesn't matter. Check the trunk of the SUV. I looked at my car. The trunk was slightly ajar. I walked over, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled the latch. Inside the trunk wasn't a threat. It wasn't a bomb. It was a stack of old, weathered files. On the top of the pile was a folder with my name on it. Below it, one for Ryan. And at the bottom, a thick, dusty folder with Zoe's name, dated 20 years ago. What is this? Zoe asked, peering over my shoulder. I opened the top folder. It was a detailed log of my finances, my property taxes, and my medical records from my heart surgery 3 years ago. Blake hadn't been targeting Zoe because she was a mark. He had been targeting us because someone had given him the keys to our lives long before he ever met her. I looked at the handwriting on the margins of my medical file. It was elegant, cursive, and painfully familiar. Mom? Zoe whispered. I looked back toward the rental house where my 7-8-year-old mother was supposedly sleeping soundly. The parasites hadn't been climbing over the fence. They had been invited through the front door. I stared at the cursive loops of the letter M in my mother's signature on the margin of my EKG results. The ink was faded, but the deliberate, heavy pressure of the pen was unmistakable. It was the same handwriting that had signed every birthday card, every Christmas tag, and apparently every piece of ammunition used against us for the last decade. Zoe reached past me, her hand shaking so badly she could barely grip the cardboard. She pulled her folder out. It was 3 inches thick. She opened it on the bumper of the car. Inside were printed transcripts of text messages, bank statements from her checking account, psych evaluations from her first rehab stint 4 years ago. How does she have this? Zoe's voice was barely a whisper. The wind coming off the lake was biting, but I didn't feel the cold. I felt entirely numb. Dad, these are texts between me and Tyler, from before we even started dating. How did she get these? Ryan pushed past us and grabbed his folder. He ripped the top open, scattering a few loose papers onto the gravel. He knelt down, squinting in the dim light of the trunk, and picked one up. It was a copy of the insurance claim for his pontoon boat. Attached to it was a wire transfer receipt, $3,000, transferred from an account under the name Eleanor Vance, my mother's maiden name. The recipient was Tyler's checking account. The date on the transfer was 2 days before the boat was driven into the rocky shallows and sunk. Ryan looked up at me, his face caught somewhere between absolute rage and total incomprehension. She paid him. She paid that drunk son of a bitch to sink my boat. It's not just the boat, I said, my voice sounding detached, like it was coming from someone else. I flipped to the back of my own file. There were documents regarding my 58th birthday. The cryptocurrency scam, the one where Chase, Zoe's ex, supposedly tried to convince my mother to drain her pension. I pulled out a printed email thread. It wasn't Chase convincing my mother. It was my mother instructing Chase on how to set up an offshore wallet. She had wired her own pension out, funneled it through Chase to make him look like a thief, and then kept the money hidden. She had played the helpless victim, crying in my living room about nearly losing her life savings, while the money sat safely in an account she controlled. Chase took the fall, and I had banned him from the house, solidifying my mother's narrative that Zoe only brought monsters into our lives. Why? Zoe asked, tears finally spilling over her cheeks. Why would Nana do this? She held me when I cried about Tyler. She told me I was too good for him. Noah stepped back from the car. He crossed his arms, looking out over the dark water. He wasn't retreating, but he was drawing a boundary. This is way above my pay grade, Mr. Carter. You're looking at a systemic manipulation. People who do this, they don't do it for the money. Not really. They do it for the dependency. I looked at the files. Noah was right. The money was a tool, but the goal was control. Every time Zoe had a crisis, every time Ryan had a financial setback, every time I had to play the savior, my mother was right there in the middle of it, offering a shoulder to cry on, offering advice, reminding us that we only had each other, that the outside world was full of predators. She had manufactured the predators to keep us locked in her orbit. Get in the truck, I said. Dad, what are we going to do? Ryan asked, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. We're going to ask her how she likes her tea, I said, and then we're going to put these files on her lap. The drive back to the Sedona rental took 22 minutes. Nobody said a word. The silence in the cab of the truck was heavy, thick with the kind of betrayal that rewires your entire understanding of your own life. Every memory I had of my mother comforting Zoe, every time she told me I was a good father for bailing my kids out, it all twisted into something grotesque. When we pulled into the gravel driveway, the black SUV and the white sedan were long gone. The house was lit up. I grabbed the stack of folders from the trunk. They were heavy. 10 years of orchestrated misery, bound in cheap manila. I unlocked the heavy oak front door. The house smelled like the expensive cigars Noah had brought, mixed with the faint scent of my mother's lavender perfume. She was sitting at the kitchen island. She hadn't gone to bed. She was wearing her silk dressing gown, a cup of chamomile tea resting in front of her. She looked up as the four of us walked in. Her expression was perfectly placid. You were gone a long time, she said, her voice carrying that gentle, frail waver she had perfected over the last decade. I was starting to worry. The desert gets so cold at night. I walked over to the granite counter and dropped the heavy stack of folders right next to her teacup. The thud echoed in the large, empty kitchen. She didn't flinch. She looked down at the folders, then back up at me. The frail waver was gone. Her eyes were sharp, entirely clear, and completely cold. I see Blake is as incompetent as the rest of them, she said calmly. She took a slow sip of her tea. Ryan snapped. He lunged forward, but I threw my arm across his chest, stopping him. You paid him, Ryan yelled, his voice cracking. You paid Tyler to sink my boat. You almost ruined my business. Your business was failing on its own, Ryan, she said, not even raising her voice. You took out a second mortgage without telling your wife. You were drowning. I just gave you a reason that didn't involve admitting you were a failure. Everyone blamed the drunk boyfriend. It saved your marriage. She looked at Zoe, who was standing frozen by the doorway, leaning heavily against Noah. And you? My mother said, her tone dripping with disappointment. You were always so desperate to be loved. You picked up strays because you thought if they were broken enough, they'd never leave you. I just helped you find the ones who were already looking for a meal ticket. I gave gave you purpose, Zoe. You destroyed my life, Zoe whispered. You let me think I was poison. You are poison, dear, she said matter-of-factly. Look at you. You brought a contractor to a family retreat, still trying to fix things. Shut up, I said. My voice was low, but it commanded the room. I stepped right up to the edge of the island. The crypto scam. You stole your own pension to make me think Chase was a thief. Chase was a thief, she corrected. He just wasn't very smart. He took his 10% cut and vanished. I secured my future. Your future? I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. I pay for everything. I pay for your house. I pay for your medical bills. I paid for this entire trip. My mother set her teacup down. She folded her hands neatly on top of her EKG folder. You pay for the things you know about David, she said, but your father didn't leave me with much. He left everything to you and Ryan. The house, the life insurance, the investments. He said I was bad with money. He said you boys would take care of me. Light, she smiled. A thin, tight line. I wasn't about to spend the last 20 years of my life asking my sons for an allowance like a child. So, I created a system. You were so busy throwing money at Zoe's disasters and Ryan's accidents that you never noticed where the rest of it was going. I stared at her. The woman who had wiped my knees when I fell, who had baked pies for my birthdays, was looking at me like I was a ledger she was balancing. You've been skimming, I said. I've been collecting what I'm owed, she replied. It's over, I told her. I'm cutting you off. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling the bank. I'm taking you off the joint accounts. I'm calling the police about the fraud with Blake and Tyler. My mother sighed. She reached into the pocket of her silk dressing gown and pulled out her smartphone. She tapped the screen a few times, her manicured nails clicking against the glass, and then slid the phone across the granite counter toward me. You can call the police, David, she said, but you might want to look at that first. I looked down at the screen. It was an email from a law firm in Denver. The subject line read, Carter Family Trust, transfer authorization. I picked up the phone and read the text. It was a confirmation of a property transfer. The deed to my house in Denver, the house I had lived in for 25 years, the house I had paid off entirely, had been transferred to an LLC. What is this? I demanded. 3 years ago, when you had your heart surgery, you gave me medical power of attorney, she explained quietly. You were heavily medicated. You also signed a durable financial power of attorney, just in case things went wrong. You didn't read the paperwork very closely. The room started to spin. You stole my house. I placed it in a trust, she corrected. An irrevocable trust. I am the sole trustee. The LLC owns the property now. If you try to cut me off, David, or if you try to involve the police with this little folder of yours, I will evict you. I will liquidate the Denver house. I will liquidate Ryan's commercial lease, which is also under the LLC, and I will leave you both with absolutely nothing. Ryan went pale. He grabbed the phone from my hand, his eyes scanning the legal jargon. Dad, she's right. The commercial lease for my garage. It's listed here. My mother picked up her chamomile tea. You can't fix this, David. Not with money, and not with threats. You are going to pack my things. You are going to drive me back to Denver, and we are going to continue on exactly as we were. You will pay for my care, and you will stop asking questions. She looked past me, fixing her gaze on Zoe. And you, she said to her granddaughter, you can keep the contractor, but don't expect a dime from this family ever again. You're written out. Zoe didn't cry this time. She just stared at the old woman, her face hardening into something I had never seen before. A cold, flat resolve. Noah stepped forward. He didn't look at my mother. He looked at me. Mr. Carter, Noah said, his voice completely level. She has the house, but she doesn't have the leverage she thinks she does. My mother scoffed. And what would a day laborer know about trust law? Noah ignored her. When we were out on the driveway, before the PI sent me the video of Blake, he sent me a background check. Standard procedure before confronting a grifter. He ran Blake, and he ran the people associated with him. Noah reached into his pocket and pulled out his own phone. He found the LLC that paid Blake, Noah said. He found the shell company she's been using to funnel the money. It's not as airtight as she thinks it is. My mother's teacup paused halfway to her mouth. For the first time all night, the placid mask slipped. Just a fraction, but I saw it. The slight twitch of her eye. Noah looked directly at her. You didn't just defraud your sons, Mrs. Carter. To set up that LLC, you used a fake social security number for the secondary officer to bypass the bank's identity checks. You didn't use a random number. You used the social security number of a dead woman. The silence in the kitchen became absolute. The hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounded like a jet engine. My PI friend noticed it because the name attached to that social belonged to a woman who died in his jurisdiction 10 years ago, Noah continued. That elevates this from family financial abuse to federal wire fraud and identity theft. The FBI doesn't care if you're a 78-year-old grandmother. They care about dead people opening bank accounts. My mother lowered her cup. It clattered against the saucer, spilling hot tea onto the granite. Noah turned back to me. She has the house on paper, Mr. Carter, but if you make one phone call, she spends the rest of her life in a federal medical facility. The question isn't whether she can evict you. The question is whether you're willing to put your mother in prison. I looked at the woman sitting across from me. The tea she had spilled was dripping off the edge of the granite counter, hitting the hardwood floor with a soft, steady times tap, tap, tap. Nobody moved to wipe it up. My mother's hands were no longer folded neatly. She was gripping the edge of the island, her knuckles white. Noah's words hung in the air like smoke. Identity theft, federal wire fraud, prison. She slowly turned her head away from Noah and looked at me. The condescension was gone, replaced by a desperate, ugly kind of defiance. You wouldn't, she whispered. Try me, I said. My voice didn't shake. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt cold. She let out a harsh, rasping laugh. You're a boy, David. You've always been a boy playing at being a man. You don't have the stomach to call the authorities on your own mother. What would the neighbors say? What would the people at your firm think? I don't give a damn what they think, I said. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I unlocked it and held it in my hand. Give me the LLC login. Give me the transfer documents to sign the Denver house back to me and the authorization to dissolve the trust. Now, she sneered. Or what? You'll call the FBI at 1 in the morning? It doesn't work like that. No, Noah interjected quietly. But my PI friend knows an assistant U.S. attorney in Denver who loves slam-dunk elder fraud cases. An email with the forged SSN documents and the LLC registration takes about 30 seconds to send. They'll have a warrant for your accounts by Monday noon. My mother's eyes darted to Ryan. She was looking for a weak link. She found him. Ryan, she said, her voice softening, dropping back into that sickeningly sweet register. Ryan, listen to me. If they freeze the LLC, they freeze the commercial lease on your garage. And that second mortgage you took out, the one you couldn't get approved for, I co-signed it using the LLC's assets as collateral. If the feds freeze my accounts, your loan is called in immediately. You lose the shop. You lose everything. Ryan stopped breathing. He looked at me, then at the floor. The color drained from his face. Is that true? I asked him. Ryan swallowed hard. hard. I couldn't get the loan, Dad. The bank said my debt-to-income ratio was too high. Mom said she had a friend with a private investment group. She just needed my signature. I didn't know it was an LLC she controlled. I swear to God. You idiot, I muttered. My mother smiled. It was a terrifying, victorious smile. You see, David? You burn me. You burn your brother. You put me in a cell. You put Ryan in bankruptcy court. His wife will leave him. You know she will. Are you really going to destroy your brother to get back at me? This was her masterpiece. She hadn't just built a safety net for herself. She had built a hostage situation. She had wired all of us to the same detonator. I looked at the phone in my hand. The screen was glaringly bright in the dim kitchen. I looked at Ryan. He was trembling, staring at our mother like she was a stranger who had just broken into his house. He was trapped. Again. Then, Zoe moved. She stepped away from Noah. She walked right up to the granite island, standing inches from my mother. The spilled tea was pooling near Zoe's boots, but she didn't look down. Do it, Uncle Ryan, Zoe said. Ryan blinked. What? Let the shop burn, Zoe said, her voice dead flat. Let it all burn. Declare bankruptcy. Move into a smaller place. Start over. My mother scoffed. Don't be dramatic, Zoe. Bankruptcy ruins lives. No, it doesn't, Zoe said. She leaned in closer to the old woman. You ruin lives. You sit in your nice house and you feed off our misery. You paid Tyler to sink a boat just so Uncle Ryan would feel like a failure. You want him to keep the shop so he owes you for the rest of his life. You want him on a leash. Zoe turned to Ryan. You're a good mechanic. You can wrench anywhere. You don't need her garage. Tell Dad to make the call. Ryan stared at Zoe. He looked at the 3-inch thick file of his own orchestrated failures sitting on the counter. He saw the wire transfer receipt with Tyler's name on it. 10 years of his mother making him feel like the screw-up of the family. 10 years of his mother patting his hand and telling him it would be okay while she actively cut the brakes on his life. Ryan stood up straight. He looked at our mother. Make the call, David, Ryan said. His voice was thick with tears, but it was steady. Send the email. I don't care about the shop. My mother's smile vanished. For a second, she looked genuinely confused. This wasn't in her script. We were supposed to fold. We always folded to protect each other. You're being ridiculous, she snapped. Both of you. This is family money. It stays in the family. It's not your money, I said. I looked at Noah. Send the email to your guy. Tell him to forward it to the AUSA in Denver. Noah didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and hit send. Done. He'll have it waiting in his inbox when he wakes up. My mother lunged across the counter. It was a sudden, violent movement from a 7-8-year-old woman. She swiped her arm across the granite, knocking the heavy folders, the empty teacup, and her own phone onto the floor. The porcelain shattered against the hardwood. You ungrateful bastards, she screamed. Her face was flushed, the veins in her neck bulging. I kept this family together. Without me, you would have drifted apart years ago. I gave you a reason to need each other. You made us sick, I said, and we're done. I stepped over the broken porcelain and grabbed her arm. I didn't squeeze hard, but I held her firmly. Go to your room. Pack your bag. We're leaving at first light. I'm driving you back to Denver, and I'm dropping you at your sister's house. You can figure out your legal defense from there. She tried to yank her arm away, but I held on. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a sudden dawning terror. She realized I wasn't playing the game anymore. The provider complex was dead. She pulled away, wrapping her silk robe tightly around herself, and walked down the hallway toward the guest bedroom without another word. The heavy oak door clicked shut behind her. The kitchen was dead silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I looked at Ryan. He was sitting on a bar stool, his face buried in his hands. He was silently weeping. He had just agreed to lose his livelihood, his business, everything he had built for 15 years, just to get out from under her thumb. Ryan, I said softly. He shook his head. Don't, Dad. Just don't. I need a minute. I nodded. I walked over to the shattered teacup and started picking up the pieces. Zoe knelt down next to me. She didn't say anything. She just helped me gather the sharp fragments of porcelain and throw them in the trash. We stayed up the rest of the night. Nobody slept. Noah brewed a pot of strong black coffee around 3 a.m. We sat at the long mahogany table, the 3-inch folders open in front of us, dissecting the last 10 years of our lives. Every financial crisis, every emergency loan, every time my mother had generously offered to pay for a lawyer or a repair, it was all documented in her own neat handwriting. She had kept receipts. She had tracked her return on investment for our misery. By 6 a.m., the Sedona sun started to bleed over the red rocks. The sky turned a bruised purple, then a bright, searing orange. I went down the hall and knocked on my mother's door. Time to go. No answer. I knocked harder. Mom, open the door. Still nothing. A spike of panic hit my chest. After everything, she was still a 7-8-year-old woman. I grabbed the handle. It was unlocked. I pushed the door open. The bed was perfectly made. Her suitcase, the expensive leather one I had bought her for Mother's Day 5 years ago, was gone. Her toiletries were cleared from the bathroom counter. I walked over to the bedside table. There was a single piece of paper sitting next to the lamp. It was a printed sheet from her LLC's banking portal. It showed an outgoing wire transfer initiated at 2:15 a.m. The amount was $450,000. It was the entire liquid balance of the trust, the money she had pulled out of the equity in my house. The destination account was a corporate bank in the Cayman Islands. Underneath the printed sheet was a handwritten note. You boys always underestimated me. I won't be at your aunt's house. I won't be anywhere you can find me. If you want the Denver house back, you can fight the LLC for it in probate court. I left enough in the escrow account to cover Ryan's lease for 3 months. After that, he's on his own. Happy 60th, David. I stared at the note. I felt my chest tighten, a dull ache spreading behind my ribs. The heart surgery from 3 years ago felt suddenly very fresh. She hadn't just stolen the house. She had liquidated its worth in the middle of the night and vanished. I walked back out to the kitchen. Ryan and Zoe looked up from their coffee. She's gone, I said, handing the paper to Ryan. Ryan read it, his eyes skimming the numbers. 450 grand. Dad, how did she even get out of here? We didn't hear a car. She must have called a private service from town, Noah said, walking over to the window. If she had the money to wire $500,000, she had the money to hire a driver who wouldn't ask questions. Zoe looked sick. She's just gone? Just like that? She knows the feds will freeze everything by Monday, I said, rubbing my temples. A migraine was starting to pound behind my eyes. She took the cash and ran before the AUSA could even open Noah's email. She's cashing out her chips. The gravity of it settled over the kitchen. I didn't own my house. I had no equity. My savings were depleted from bailing out Zoe and Ryan for years. I was 60 years old, and I was functionally broke. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a calendar notification. Event. 60th birthday dinner at Mariposa. Reservation for 4. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. What? Ryan asked. It's my birthday, I said. Nobody said happy birthday. There was nothing happy about it. Okay, Noah said. clapping his hands once, breaking the silence. He was in full contractor mode now, assessing the structural damage, figuring out what was load-bearing and what had collapsed. Here's the reality. She wired the money offshore. That takes time to clear. The AUSA in Denver might not be in the office on a Saturday, but the FBI's Financial Crimes Division has an emergency duty officer. We don't wait for Monday. We call the local field office in Phoenix right now. We give them the wire routing number. They can flag it with the correspondent bank before it lands in the Caymans. I looked at him. You know how to do that? I don't, but my PI does, Noah said. He was already dialing. We have to move fast. If that wire clears the final hop, the money is gone forever. Noah pressed his phone tight to his ear, his finger plugging his other ear against the hum of the refrigerator. He spoke in low, clipped sentences. Routing number? Yeah. Cayman. Corporate correspondent? No. The LLC is domestic. Registered in Colorado. I watched him, my heart hammering a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Ryan was perfectly still, staring at the empty spot on the counter where our mother's teacup used to be. Noah hung up. He didn't look triumphant. He looked like a guy who had just inspected a foundation and found a crack running all the way to the bedrock. He's calling the duty officer, Noah said. But he said not to hold your breath. The originating wire came from her bank in Denver. To stop it immediately, the account holder has to issue a fraud recall. The feds can freeze the destination account, but if she used a layered shell company down there, the money will bounce to a secondary account the second it lands. We need your bank to pull the plug. I pulled out my wallet, my hands shaking so badly I dropped 2 credit cards onto the hardwood. I found my debit card, flipped it over, and dialed the 1-800 number for the fraud department. Dad, Zoe said softly. She reached down and picked up my dropped cards. Sit down. I didn't sit. I paced the length of the kitchen, listening to an automated voice tell me my call was very important to them. It was 6:45 a.m. on a Saturday. The hold music was a tinny, upbeat jazz track that made me want to throw the phone through the massive plate glass window. 7 minutes past 8. Finally, a human voice. Thank you for calling fraud prevention. My name is Marcus. How can I help you today? I need to stop a wire transfer, I said, my voice tight. It was initiated 4 hours ago from an LLC account tied to my personal trust. It's fraudulent. I can certainly look into that for you, sir. May I have the LLC name and the account number? I read the numbers off the printed sheet my mother had left behind. I heard the clacking of a keyboard. Thank you. And your name, sir? David Carter. More clacking. Then a pause. Sir, I'm not seeing a David Carter listed as an authorized signer or beneficial owner on this account. I know. The account was set up fraudulently by my mother, Eleanor Carter. She used a forged power of attorney to transfer my assets into it. Marcus's voice shifted. The customer service warmth drained out, replaced by the sterile, liability-avoidant tone of a corporate script. I understand this is a stressful situation, Mr. Carter. However, because you are not an authorized party on this account, I cannot discuss its activity, nor can I initiate a wire recall. Marcus, listen to me, I pleaded, gripping the edge of the granite island. She is stealing $500,000. It's going to the Cayman Islands. If you don't stop it right now, it's gone. Sir, if you believe fraud has occurred, you need to file a report with your local law enforcement agency. Once a detective is assigned, they can subpoena the bank's records. We will fully cooperate with any law enforcement investigation. A subpoena takes weeks. The money is moving right now. I'm sorry, sir. Without authorization from the account holder, my hands are tied. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? I stared at the phone. The sheer banal cruelty of the bureaucracy was suffocating. She knew this. She knew exactly how the system worked. She knew the bank would protect her privacy over my stolen money. No, I whispered. Nothing else. I hung up. I looked at Ryan and Zoe. They won't do it. I'm not on the account. Ryan let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. He turned away from us and walked out the sliding glass door onto the back deck. He didn't take his coat. He just walked to the edge of the wooden railing, pulled out his phone, and stared at it. He has to call Sarah, Zoe said quietly, watching him through the glass. He has to tell his wife they lost the shop. I felt physically sick. I walked over to the nearest dining chair and collapsed into it. My chest was tight, a dull, radiating pressure that made it hard to draw a full breath. I pressed my palm against my sternum, trying to massage the ache away. Dad? Zoe stepped toward me, her nursing instincts kicking in immediately. Her eyes locked onto my hand on my chest. Dad, look at me. Are you having chest pain? It's just stress, I wheezed. I'm fine. Noah, get his bag from the bedroom, the one with his medications, Zoe ordered, her voice completely stripped of the fragile, broken girl who had been crying by the lake a few hours ago. She dropped to her knees in front of me and grabbed my wrist, 2 fingers pressing firmly against my pulse point. Breathe with me, in through the nose. Hold it. I did as she asked. Her fingers were cool against my skin. Her pulse check was steady, professional. Noah jogged back into the room with my leather dopp kit. Zoe unzipped it, bypassed the daily vitamins, and pulled out the small orange bottle of nitroglycerin pills I carried, just in case, since the surgery. Under the tongue, she said, popping one out and handing it to me. Don't swallow it, let it dissolve. The bitter, metallic taste flooded my mouth. Within seconds, the pounding in my head intensified a known side effect, but the heavy, crushing weight on my chest began to recede. Zoe didn't let go of my wrist until the color started to return to my face. Better? Yeah, I breathed out. Better. Thank you. She sat back on her heels, looking up at me. You can't fix this right now. You can't outlawyer her on a Saturday morning. You need to survive today, Dad. Just today. Through the glass, I watched Ryan holding his phone to his ear. His shoulders were hunched, his head bowed. I couldn't hear the words, but I could see the exact moment his wife answered. His entire body seemed to cave in on itself. He leaned his forehead against the wooden post of the deck awning, his free hand gripping the railing so hard his knuckles shone white in the morning sun. My phone buzzed on the table. I flinched, expecting another bank notification, but the caller ID showed a local Sedona number. I recognized it. It was the property management company for the rental house. I answered it on speaker. Hello? Hi, Mr. Carter. This is Jillian with Red Rock Retreats, a cheerful, aggressively peppy voice said. Just calling to confirm your checkout tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I also wanted to touch base regarding the payment method on file. I frowned. The rental was paid in full 3 months ago. Yes, sir, it was, Jillian said. But we received a chargeback notification from American Express at 3 a.m. last night. The cardholder disputed the charge as unauthorized. We need to secure an alternate form of payment before checkout tomorrow, or we'll have to involve local authorities for theft of services. The total for the week is $6,800. I closed my eyes. The nitroglycerin headache throbbed behind my temples. She hadn't just taken the $500,000, she had disputed the credit card charge for the birthday trip I had supposedly treated everyone to, using the card connected to the LLC. She was making me pay for the privilege of being destroyed in this house. Mr. Carter, are you still there? I'm here, I said, my voice hollow. I'll give you a new card. I pulled out my personal checking debit card, the one with my emergency savings. I read her the numbers. I knew my balance was around $8,000. The charge would clear, but it would leave me with almost nothing to float the legal fees I was going to need on Monday. Great, that went through, Jillian chirped. We're so sorry for the inconvenience. We hope you're having a wonderful 60th birthday weekend. Thanks, I muttered, and ended the call. Noah was leaning against the counter, arms crossed. She's scorching the earth. She wants me paralyzed, I said, staring at the blank phone screen. She wants me so broke and so overwhelmed that I can't afford to hire a forensic accountant or a lawyer to untangle the trust. She knows if I can't fight back immediately, the trail goes cold. The sliding door opened. Ryan walked back inside. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face utterly blank. He walked past me, past Zoe, and went straight to the coffee pot. He poured a mug, his hand shaking slightly, and took a sip. Sarah is taking the kids to her mother's house in Phoenix, Ryan said to the coffee mug. Ryan, I'm so sorry, I said. He shook his head, cutting me off. Don't. It's not your fault. It's mine. I signed the paperwork. Sarah asked me to have a lawyer look at it, and I told her no, because Mom said it would hurt her feelings if we didn't trust her. He let out a dry, rattling breath. She said she's calling a divorce attorney on Monday. She said she can't be married to a man who puts his mother's feelings above his family's security. He finally turned to look at us. He looked 10 years older than he had the night before. I'm going to pack my truck. I'm driving back to Denver. I have to go to the shop and figure out what tools I can sell before the bank locks the doors. Wait, Noah said. Ryan glared at him. I'm not waiting for your PI to perform a miracle, Noah. My marriage is over. My business is dead. I'm leaving. I'm not talking about miracles, Noah said, keeping his voice perfectly level. I'm talking about tools. You said you need to sell your equipment. Yeah, Snap-on boxes, lifts, diagnostic computers, stuff I own outright, not tied to the lease. Noah pulled out his wallet and took out a heavy matte black card. It wasn't a credit card. It looked like a business account card. He set it on the granite counter and slid it toward Ryan. I manage a fleet of 12 work trucks for my contracting business, Noah said. My lead mechanic quit 2 weeks ago to move to Texas. I have a 3-bay garage in Aurora that's sitting empty. I have the lease, I have the clients, I just don't have the guy to run it. Ryan stared at the card. I don't need charity. It's not charity, Noah fired back, his tone hardening. It's business. I'm losing money every day my trucks are down. You need a place to put your tools and a verifiable income to show your wife you aren't completely wiped out. You move your boxes into my shop on Monday. We split the labor profit 60-40. You keep 40. You run the floor, I bring the trucks. Take it or leave it. Ryan looked at the card, then up at Noah. He didn't say thank you. He just reached out, picked up the card, and put it in his pocket. 60-40 is steep. You have no leverage, Noah said deadpan. A tiny, almost imperceptible smirk touched the corner of Ryan's mouth. Fair enough. He turned and walked down the hall to his bedroom to pack. Zoe watched him go, then looked at Noah. You don't have an empty 3-bay garage in Aurora? Noah didn't blink. I will by Monday. I know a guy trying to break his lease. I'll take it over. I sat in the chair, watching the two of them. Zoe, who had been the source of so much chaos in my life, and Noah, the man I had accused of being a con artist just 12 hours ago. They were the only ones holding the roof up right now. What about the house, Dad? Zoe asked, turning her attention back to me. The Denver house. If the LLC owns it, can she actually kick you out? Yes, I said. Legally, I'm a tenant in a property owned by a corporate entity. She can serve me a 30-day notice to vacate. Without money to fight it in court, I'll have to leave. Where will you go? I looked out the window at the Red Rocks. I had lived in that house for 25 years. I had raised my children there. I had paid off the mortgage with years of 60-hour work weeks. Now, it was just a line item on an eviction notice waiting to be printed. I don't know, I said honestly. An apartment, a long-term motel, whatever I can afford on what's left of my salary. Zoe walked over to the counter and picked up the thick manila folder with my name on it, the one my mother had kept, documenting her financial manipulation of my life. She flipped it open. Wait, Zoe said, her brow furrowing. She pulled out a piece of paper from the very back of the file. It was yellowed at the edges, much older than the recent bank statements. Dad, look at this. She handed it to me. It was a copy of my father's original will, not the revised one my mother had shown us after he died, but an earlier draft. It was signed and notarized, dated 15 years ago. I scanned the dense legal text. My eyes caught on a specific clause highlighted in faded yellow marker. In the event that Eleanor Vance Carter survives me, the primary residence shall pass to her in life estate. Upon her passing, or in the event she vacates the property for a period exceeding 6 consecutive months, the title shall automatically transfer in full to my son, David Thomas Carter. A life estate, I murmured, the legal terminology clicking into place in my exhausted brain. What does that mean? Zoe asked. It means my father didn't leave her the house outright, I said, my heart rate picking up again. He left her the right to live times in it until she died. But she didn't own the underlying asset. She couldn't sell it, and more importantly, she couldn't transfer it to an LLC. Noah leaned over my shoulder to look at the document. If she didn't have the right to transfer it, the deed transfer she did, with your forged power of attorney, is void from inception. The LLC doesn't own the house. It never did. But why did she have a different will when he died? Zoe asked. Because she probably had him sign a new one when his dementia got bad at the end, I said, a sickening realization washing over me, the one that left everything to her unconditionally. But if this older will exists, and we can prove he wasn't competent when he signed the new one, the transfer to the LLC is completely fraudulent. It's not a civil dispute anymore. It's title fraud. I looked at the highlighted marker. My mother had kept this copy. She had highlighted that exact clause. She knew the vulnerability in her own armor, and she had kept the evidence in her personal files, tucked away in the trunk of a car she thought I'd never look in. Her arrogance was staggering. She couldn't bear to throw away the paper that proved how clever she was, even if it could destroy her. We need to get back to Denver, I said, standing up. The fatigue was still there, but the crushing despair was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. We need to take this to the county clerk's office on Monday morning. We file a-list pendens, a notice of pending litigation on the title. It freezes the property. She won't be able to sell it or evict me while the title is in dispute. Zoe smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the fierce, hardened smile of a woman who had finally stopped running. Let's pack the cars. We spent the next 2 hours stripping the rental house. We didn't leave a single trace we had been there, other than the broken porcelain in the trash. Ryan loaded his truck, his face set in grim determination. He hugged Zoe, shook Noah's hand, and drove off first, heading straight for his shop to start boxing his life up. Zoe, Noah, and I piled into my SUV. The drive back north was a grueling 12 hours through the desert and over the mountains. I drove the first shift, my hands gripping the wheel, the thick manila folders sitting on the passenger passenger seat next to me like a passenger. We pulled into my driveway in Denver just after 9 p.m. The house was dark. The neighborhood was quiet, the streetlights casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. It looked exactly the way it had when we left, perfectly normal, hiding the absolute wreckage underneath. I unlocked the front door and pushed it open. The familiar smell of lemon polish and old wood greeted me. I reached out and flicked the hall light switch. Nothing happened. I flicked it again. Dead. Power's out? Noah asked, stepping in behind me. Maybe a blown breaker, I said, pulling out my phone and turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness of the hallway. I swept the light into the living room. The furniture was gone. I froze. The couch, the armchairs, the television, the antique oak coffee table my grandfather had built, gone. Just bare carpet with deep indentations where the heavy furniture used to sit. Dad, Zoe whispered from behind me. I swung the light toward the dining room. The table was gone. The china cabinet was gone. I walked faster, my boots echoing unnaturally loud in the empty house. I went to the kitchen. The appliances were there, but every dish, every pot, every piece of silverware had been stripped from the cabinets. Noah walked over to the kitchen sink and turned the faucet. A short hiss of air, a trickle of brown water, and then nothing. Water shut off at the main, Noah said. Power too. She hadn't just wired the money offshore. Before she left, she had called liquidators. She had sold the contents of the house, probably for pennies on the dollar, just to have it emptied out. She had called the utility companies and canceled the services. She knew the list pendants trick. She knew I might try to fight for the title. She couldn't take the walls, so she made sure the house was unlivable. I stood in the middle of my empty kitchen, the beam of my flashlight shaking slightly as it hit the bare drywall. On the kitchen island, sitting perfectly in the center, was a single, white envelope. I walked over and picked it up. My name was written on the front in that same elegant, cursive script. I tore it open. There was no letter inside, just a single, heavy silver coin. It was a 1-year sobriety chip. I looked at Zoe. She was staring at the coin in my hand, her breath catching in her throat. That's, Zoe started, her voice trembling. That's Jade's chip, the girl who stole from you. She got it 3 months ago. I stared at the silver medal. My mother hadn't just paid Tyler to sink a boat. She hadn't just used Chase to hide her pension. She was still in contact with Jade, the girl who had stolen from my emergency cash drawer. My mother hadn't hired a random liquidator. She had given the keys to the parasites Zoe had brought into our lives, letting them pick my house clean before she vanished. I dropped the silver coin onto the granite island. It landed with a dull, heavy clink that echoed in the empty kitchen. I waited for the anger to hit me. I waited for the crushing weight of the last 24 hours to finally snap my spine. I was 60 years old. My mother had stolen my equity, stripped my home to the bare drywall, and used the very people who had terrorized my daughter to do it. I was supposed to fall apart right here on the linoleum. Instead, I looked at Zoe. She was staring at the coin. The old Zoe would have spiraled. She would have started hyperventilating, apologizing frantically, taking the weight of Jade's betrayal and my mother's cruelty and turning it inward until she shattered. She didn't. She reached out, picked up the silver chip, and walked over to the kitchen window. She unlatched the screen, slid the glass open, and threw the coin as hard as she could into the dark, overgrown backyard. She turned back to me. Her face was completely calm. We're going to need sleeping bags, she said. Noah let out a short, quiet laugh. The tension in the room broke, deflating like a punctured tire. He pulled out his keys. There's a 2-4-hour supercenter about 4 miles from here. Give me 40 minutes. He left. Zoe and I sat on the floor of the empty living room, our backs against the wall where the antique oak coffee table used to be. The hardwood was cold. The silence of a house with no hum of a refrigerator or ticking of a clock is absolute. She wanted this to be a tomb, I said into the dark. I know, Zoe said. She pulled her knees up to her chest. She wanted us to walk in here and feel like there was nothing left. She wanted us to call her and beg. We're not calling. No, we're not. Noah came back just after midnight. He carried 2 massive shopping bags. He had bought 3 thick sleeping bags, a battery-powered camping lantern, a case of bottled water, and a family-sized bucket of fried chicken. We sat in a circle on the floor, the harsh white light of the LED lantern casting long, weird shadows against the walls. We ate cold fried chicken in an empty house, and for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. The shoe had dropped. It had smashed through the floorboards. There was nothing left to fear. We slept on the hardwood. I woke up at 7 a.m. on Sunday, my back aching, my joints stiff, but my head was clear. We spent Sunday mapping out the attack. We didn't have internet, so we used Noah's phone hotspot. We found the address for the Denver County clerk and recorder. We found the address for the main branch of the bank my mother had used to register her fraudulent LLC. Monday morning at 8 a.m., we were standing outside the municipal building. We were the first ones through the doors. We filed the original will. We filed the Times list pendants, slapping a massive legal red flag on the title of my house. The clerk stamped the paperwork, officially freezing any potential sale or transfer of the property. Then, we drove to the bank. We didn't go to a teller. I walked straight to the receptionist at the front desk and told her I needed to speak to the branch manager regarding a fraudulent commercial loan. 10 minutes later, we were sitting in a glass-walled office across from a man named Peterson. He had the slick, polished look of a guy used to dealing with wealthy clients. He looked at us 3 people wearing wrinkled clothes who had slept on a floor with polite skepticism. Mr. Carter, I see the LLC in our system, Peterson said, tapping his keyboard. Eleanor Vance is listed as the sole managing member. As I'm sure the phone representatives told you, unless you are on the account, I can't discuss the balance or the wire transfers. I don't care about the wire transfers, I said. I pulled the manila folder out of my bag and laid it on his desk. I care about the collateral she used to secure the credit line she just drained. Peterson frowned. The collateral is the property deeded to the LLC, a residential home in Denver, valued at roughly $600,000. She didn't own it, I said. I slid the copy of my father's original will across the desk. I tapped the highlighted clause with my index finger. Life estate, I said. My father left her the right to live there. He did not leave her the title. The transfer she executed using my medical power of attorney is legally void. You accepted a fraudulent deed as collateral. Peterson stared at the document. He read the clause once. Then he read it again. The polite skepticism vanished from his face, replaced by a sudden, chalky pallor. If this is accurate, Peterson said, his voice dropping an octave, this deed transfer is invalid. It's accurate, Noah said, leaning forward. We just filed it with the county clerk an hour ago, along with the Times list pendants. The title is frozen. Peterson looked at his computer screen. I knew exactly what he was looking at. He was looking at the $450,000 outgoing wire transfer to the Cayman Islands, a loan the bank had issued, fully believing it was secured by real estate. She didn't steal my money, Mr. Peterson, I said softly. She stole your Times money. She used my house as a prop to rob your bank of $500,000. The silence in the office was exquisite. I watched a bead of sweat form at the edge of Peterson's hairline. When it's a family dispute, the bank tells you to hire a lawyer and call the police. They don't care. But when a bank realizes it has just underwritten a massive unsecured loan based on forged documents, the machinery of corporate vengeance engages instantly. Peterson picked up his phone. He didn't call customer service. He called the bank's regional legal counsel. Within an hour, we were sitting in a larger conference room with 2 bank lawyers and an investigator. They made copies of the will. They made copies of the forged power of attorney. They took down every detail about my mother, the LLC, and the offshore account. The bank will file an injunction to reverse the deed transfer, the lead attorney told me, looking deeply stressed. We have to clear the title defect to establish the exact nature of the fraud. We'll be handing this over to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division by noon. Good luck finding her, I said, standing up. She's 78. She looks like everybody's grandmother, and she's smarter than all of us. We walked out of the bank into the bright Denver sunlight. I took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. I didn't have $500,000, but I had my house back. The bank's lawyers were going to do all the heavy lifting to rip the LLC apart, purely to save their own skins. What now? Zoe asked, looking up at me. Now, I said. We go buy a mattress. 6 months later, the house wasn't fully furnished, but it wasn't empty anymore. I had bought a decent couch from a thrift store, a sturdy oak dining table from an estate sale, and a coffee pot. The power and water had been turned back on by Tuesday of that first week. Ryan didn't save his marriage. Sarah filed the papers in November. It was ugly for a while, but it settled. He moved into a small apartment in Aurora, 10 minutes from Noah's shop. He runs the floor. Noah brings in the fleet contracts. They argue constantly about part suppliers and labor hours, but Ryan's hands are dirty, his bills are paid, and he looks lighter than he has in years. He comes over for dinner on Sundays. Zoe didn't move in with Noah. She stayed in the guest cottage out back. She finished her clinical rotations in December and passed her nursing boards on the first try. She works the ER night shift at Denver General. She sees people at their absolute worst addicts, liars, people broken by their own bad choices. She treats them, she bandages them, and then she clocks out and leaves them there. She doesn't bring them home anymore. Every month, on the first of the month, she slides an envelope under my front door. Inside is a $50 bill, her payment for Blake's garage door. I told her to stop after the first 2 months, but she refused. She said she needs the ritual. I keep the bills in a jar on the kitchen counter. We never heard from my mother. The bank's lawyers managed to unwind the deed, officially returning the title to my name in February. The FBI agent assigned to the case told me they tracked the wire to the Caymans, then to a holding company in Panama, and finally to a private account in Costa Rica. They suspect she's living there, likely in a high-end expat community where nobody asks questions about where your retirement funds came from. They issued a federal warrant for wire fraud and identity theft, but Costa Rica doesn't extradite for non-violent white-collar crimes involving elderly citizens. She's safe. She got away with it. But sometimes, I sit at my second-hand dining table with my morning coffee, and I think about her life now. She has her money, but she's stuck in a gilded cage in a humid country, surrounded by strangers, constantly checking the news, constantly looking over her shoulder to see if an Interpol flag finally dropped. She has no one to manipulate, no crises to manage, no family to bind to her with guilt and stolen cash. She won the money, but she lost her purpose. I look out the window toward the guest cottage. Zoe's scrubs are hanging on the clothesline, snapping in the crisp mountain wind. Ryan's truck is parked in the driveway. He came over early to fix a rattle in my steering column. The house is quiet. The ghosts are gone. I take a sip of my coffee. It tastes perfect.